Hi, I'm Andy Teach, host of Andy's Awesome Adventures, and welcome to Budapest, Hungary.
This is the Buda Castle on the Buda side of Budapest. They obviously don't know we're filming for Andy's Awesome Adventures. So this part is actually a museum, but there's a castle up there as well, a church or two. Beautiful example of Hungarian architecture.
Back of me is the famous Chain Bridge. It's the first permanent bridge across the Danube River in Budapest. It's 633 feet long. It was built in 1849, and it connects the Buda side of Budapest on the far side to the Pest side, which is where we are now. So how are we going to get to the Buda side? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Boom!
We're here. Alright, we're at Castle Hill. And now we're outside in a 95-degree heat with no shade.
Per la visita panoramica storica italiana partiamo.
Late in the day, we need to go home. It's not lunch time yet. Okay. They're going to turn around with
But don't want to like take a bit from a little bit.
Everyone.
And then in the middle of the day, to just stay in the house.
Yeah,
So we are up on Castle Hill, and this is the Budapest History Museum over here. It's also the National Gallery, which is an art museum. And today is 95 degrees. It's a little toasty. You guys thirsty? Because I am.
The Budapest History Museum, also known as Castle Museum, was founded in 1887 on its original location, and in 1967 it found a permanent home in the newly renovated Buda Castle. The museum contains exhibits of Hungary's history from ancient times to the end of the Soviet occupation. So I'm here on the Buda side at Castle Hill by Buda Castle, and a brief history of Hungary. It was founded in 896 AD. It's one of the oldest cities in Europe. In the Middle Ages, it was ruled by the Turks and the Ottoman Empire. And then in the late 19th century, early 20th century, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And in 1919, the communists took over. During World War II, the Hungarians fought on the side of the Nazis, but then the Soviets took it over for over 4 decades. They controlled Hungary. In 1956, there was a Hungarian uprising to defeat the Soviets, but it didn't last that long, and over 20,000 Hungarians were killed. It wasn't until 1989 that Hungary became free of the Soviet domination, and that is the country we see today. The Matthias Coronation Church is a Roman Catholic church located at the heart of Buda's Castle district in Trinity Square. It's officially known as the Church of Our Lady and was originally built in 1015, although no archaeological remains exist. It was the second largest church of medieval Buda and the 7th largest church of the medieval Hungarian kingdom. The current building was constructed in the second half of the 14th century and was extensively restored in the late 19th century. During World War II, the church was badly damaged. Matthias Church was used as a camp by the Germans and Soviets in 1944 to 1945 during the Soviet occupation of Hungary. The church was largely renovated between 1950 and 1970 with funding from the Hungarian government. Fisherman's Bastion is a white stone terrace in Neo-Gothic and Neo-Romanesque style. It was built between 1895 and 1902 mostly for decorative purposes. There was a restoration project after its near destruction during World War II, just after the war.
So whatever you see downtown Pest is basically after the war, so second part of the 19th century.
Somebody could take a picture of all three.
I can take it for you.
I'll make it okay.
That would
Sure.
I'll get some different angles.
Okay, sounds good. Like this?
She thinks outside the box.
I know.
Behind me is St.Stephen's Basilica, or St. Stephen's Church. It is named after Stephen, the first king of Hungary. He ruled around 1000 AD, and it's rumored that his right hand is housed inside the church. Let's give him a hand. St. Stephen's Basilica is the third largest church building in present-day Hungary and can hold 8,500 people. The site of today's basilica was a theater in the 18th century which hosted animal fights. Equal with the Hungarian Parliament Building, it's one of the 2 tallest buildings in Budapest at 315 feet. The basilica was completed in 1905 after 54 years of construction. Much of this delay can be attributed to the collapse of the dome in 1868. Architect Joseph Kraus called upon many of Hungary's most well-known sculptors and painters to contribute to the decoration of the inside of St. Stephen's. The interior features about 50 different types of marble, elaborately decorated chapels, and many sculptures, including a statue of St. Stephen. Special papal permission had to be granted in order to place a statue on the altar.
You may be wondering when I'll show you the famous mummified right hand of Stephen. Well, unfortunately, you won't see it because I made a rookie tourist mistake. I completely forgot to look for it. This is one reason why it's always best to take an organized tour when traveling. The hand, which allegedly has miraculous properties, is actually located in a small chapel to the left of the main altar. If it's any consolation, no one is 100% sure that this is actually the hand belonging to King St. Stephen. The Hungarian Parliament Building, also known as the Parliament of Budapest, is the seat of the National Assembly of Hungary, one of Europe's oldest legislative buildings. It was completed in 1904 and is currently the largest building in Hungary. It's the third largest parliament building in the world. The Parliament Building is in the Gothic Revival style. The dome is Renaissance Revival architecture. The facade displays 88 statues of Hungarian rulers, Transylvanian leaders, and famous military figures. With its height of 96 meters or 315 feet, it's one of the two tallest buildings in Budapest along with St. Stephen's Basilica. No building in Budapest is allowed to be more than 96 meters. The Parliament Building is 879 feet long and 404 feet wide. Its interior includes 10 courtyards, 13 passenger and freight elevators, 27 gates, 29 staircases, and 691 rooms, including more than 200 offices. The Hungarian Coronation regalia is the most prized treasure in the building, and it's been housed in Dome Hall since 2000. It includes the Holy Crown, the Orb, the Scepter, and a Renaissance sword. They are protected 24 hours a day by the Crown Guard of the Hungarian Armed Forces, and unfortunately no filming or photography is allowed. Shoot it.
Pues sí, pero a la gente le gusta. O sea, yo entran al
The Hungarian State Opera House was opened in 1884 and was built in Neo-Renaissance style with elements of Baroque. Emperor Franz Joseph financed the construction, though he received little recognition for his generosity. Statues of the world's greatest composers, including Mozart, Beethoven, and Verdi, adorn the main facade.
I know that restaurants have their own house wine, but I'm wondering if the Budapest Opera House has its own opera house wine. Thank you very much. I wrote that myself.
Remember the name of the airport? So this is Mr. Airport, who was actually really a player.
In beauty and acoustic quality, the Budapest Opera House is considered to be among the finest opera houses in the world. The auditorium holds 1,261 people and is decorated with 15 pounds of gold. It's horseshoe-shaped, and according to measurements done in the 1970s by a group of international engineers, has the third best acoustics in Europe after opera houses in Milan and Paris. The main hall is decorated with a bronze chandelier weighing 3 tons. It illuminates a fresco by Karoli Lotz, depicting the Greek gods on Olympus. The central stage arch employed the most modern technology of the time. It featured a revolving stage and metal hydraulic machinery. The royal box is located centrally in a 3-story circle. It's decorated with sculptures symbolizing the 4 operatic voices: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. There are guided tours of the building in 6 languages almost every day: English, German, Spanish, French, Italian, and Hungarian.
Hero Square is one of the major squares in Budapest. Its central feature is the Millennium Memorial. Construction began in 1896 to commemorate the 1000th anniversary of the Hungarian conquest of the Carpathian Basin and the foundation of the Hungarian state. Construction was completed in 1900. At the center of Hero Square stands a Millennium Monument designed in 1894 by Albert Schickendance and completed 35 years later. Soaring above Hero Square is the Millennium Column, the focal point of the Millennium Monument. The column is topped with a statue of the Archangel Gabriel, who holds the Hungarian Holy Crown and the Double Cross in his hands. Since its creation, Hero Square has been the site of numerous special events, including many socialist holiday celebrations staged during the country's communist era. In 1989, it was the site of the ceremonial reburial of the leader of the uprising against the Soviet occupation in 1956. The Great Synagogue, also known as Dohany Street Synagogue, was built between 1854 and 1859 based on plans by Viennese architect Ludwig Foster. The synagogue is basically Moorish in style with two tall towers, which are 143 feet tall and are capped by copper domes. There's also some Byzantine, Gothic, and Romantic elements in the architecture. The building contains almost 3,000 seats, roughly half for men, half for women, making it the second largest Jewish synagogue in the world after New York City's Temple Emmanuel. The structure was heavily damaged during World War II and was restored in the 1990s after the fall of the Iron Curtain. Ooh, that smells like cheese. Well, I'm glad we're buying all this food because boy am I hungry.
Now, why I'm telling you this, because you know what bank it is? Savings bank. No? It's a marvelous idea. It's a marvelous idea.
Freedom Square, also called Liberty Square, was built on the site of a former Austrian barracks. The obelisk is the only monument dedicated to the Soviets which still survives in Budapest, and it's not far from the American embassy, which we were not allowed to film. The monument honors the soldiers of the Red Army who died in 1944 to 1945 during the liberation of Budapest. The obelisk features a crest showing the communist hammer and sickle and is crowned with a five-pointed communist star. And this building is the equivalent of their Federal Reserve.
So, it looks affected by the government.
This is a controversial memorial to the 600,000 victims of the 1944 German occupation of Hungary. It was unveiled in 2014 and was erected overnight by the government, and it shows an angel being attacked by a German eagle, a design that critics say glosses over Hungary's active role in sending its Jews to their deaths during the Holocaust. Jewish groups and others see it as an attempt by the government to downplay the Hungarian role in the Holocaust. They object to the depiction of Hungary as a victim of the Nazis, given that it was a wartime ally of Germany. The Hungarian government disputes the interpretation, arguing the figure attacked represents all victims of fascism and not only the Hungarian state. The government stresses that both Jews and non-Jews suffered during the war.
Well, the bridge is called the French Bridge, and the story is the following. At the end of the 19th century, there was a young French guy who came over here in Budapest as a tourist. Wanted to stay here only for 3 days. Ended up here with 3 years. So please, gentlemen, be careful. Hungarian women are dangerous. Definitely one of the most beautiful parliament buildings in the world. And I mentioned that it was inspired by the London Parliament Building. A couple of more interesting things. Magic numbers. In the Parliament Building we have 11 courtyards, 11 elevators. Remember, I'm talking about 1904. There were elevators only in London at that time, anywhere else in the world. So very modern technology was used. You know, the question was how many members of the Parliament we have here. 270 something. And of course it won't say anything to you, but I tell you that in Germany, a country which is 10 times bigger than Hungary is, they have only 200 MPs, members of parliament. That we have this little problem and a big scandal about the idea of the prime minister that the ministry will move up to the old medieval quarters. Have a look at the building where you see the crane. This is the building under reconstruction, and that's gonna be the prime minister's ministry over there. With a quite nice view, I think. So it's not a bad thing to get up early in the morning and have a coffee and enjoy this view. And the other building on the left-hand side, the white, relatively small building, is the official office of the president of the country. So they will be next to one another. In Hungary, the real power is concentrated in the hands of the prime minister. The president, of course, he's got a veto in different kinds of laws, but his power is limited anyway. Now, this is Chain Bridge. We have crossed the bridge, remember? And I promised to give you the story of the bridge quickly. And the former royal palace. Now, this is the complex of museums. The most important one is the National Gallery, and I think I mentioned the Picasso exhibition, which is there in the National Gallery right now. The Budapest History Museum and the Ludwig Modern Art Museum can be found on the inside. Okay, let's get back to the story of the bridge because that's interesting. In the 1830s, there was a young Hungarian aristocrat who was a very rich man, very educated person. And he was traveling in England because some of his family members were related to the royal family in England. So he was traveling in England, and south of London there is a small town which is called Marlow. And he happened to be there, and in Marlow he saw a wonderful bridge that is called the Marlow Suspension Bridge, which is identical to this one. And he said to himself, this is ridiculous that the capital city of my home we do not have a permanent bridge. And in an unimportant little place like Malo, they have this wonderful bridge. And then he actually offered 3 years of his income coming from his estates for the construction of a bridge like that. He found the original builders of the Malo Bridge, Adam Clark, who happened to be an Englishman, he was the architect, and Terry William Clark, who happened to be a Scottish man from Scotland, Edinburgh, who was the engineer, brought them over here, hired them, and these people were able to complete this wonderful bridge in just 3 short years' time. So Elizabeth Bridge, we know the story of the bridge. On the left-hand side, that is the downtown parish church. The front is brand new. What I mean is only 200 years old. But the building itself is 11th century. And when we had a little, I think it is a private talk, no, in front of the Opera House, I told you that Wagner and Liszt gave a concert for the wedding of Wagner's daughter, and that happened in that church. So that was the place for the concert. Constructed there by the Turks, early 16th century. This is a Turkish spa, still working. Hundreds of years pass by, but still it is a Turkish spa. It means that women, men are separated from one another. One day for the gents, next day for the ladies. And then the yellow building was constructed in the 19th century, of course, to enlarge the spa. And the left-hand side, where you see the restaurant sign, was constructed only about 5 years ago. Okay, on the top of the hill on our right-hand side, on the Buda side, we are just cruising by the Statue of Liberty. On the top, you can see this enormous lady, as we call her sometimes, holding an olive branch in her 2 hands, which is a symbol of peace. So the statue was erected right after the Second World War to celebrate the end of the war. The next bridge right in front of us is called Liberty Bridge, named after the statue, of course. Very nice bridge, both sides. So beautifully decorated bridge. And there is a crazy guy sitting up there. Probably the police will come immediately, you see, at the lamppost. He probably is a broken-hearted lover who is trying to commit suicide. This is really serious. So there are a lot of young people who jump from there to the river Danube because their lovers left them. But I don't know, he's just celebrating the football match or he's crazy, who knows. Industrialized areas of Western Europe and the farming lands of Eastern Europe. So the boats arrived here, then the market hall is still a market hall, but this one is one of the well-established universities of the country, the University of Economics, my former workplace for 23 long years. Yeah. Crazy. You don't need to find a parking place for your car. You can have a drink in the interval, take the same drink back after the performance. And I don't really have to tell you that all of these modern buildings on the left-hand side were constructed right after these 2 buildings were ready. And now they are probably very expensive because you have to pay for the building. So this is really true. Some offices